Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadyasya yatanviyad itaratascha vigyaswarat.
Janmadyasya yatanvaya itaratascha vigyaswarat.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikamaye Muyanti Atsurayaha.
Tenne Brahma Hridaya Adhikamaye Muyanti Atsurayaha.
Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargomesha.
Tejo Varimridha Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisagomrisya.
Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
Of water seen in fire or land seen on water.
Water seen in fire, land, sea, and water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations in the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma projita kaitravatra.
Dharma prujita kaitavutra.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Vedyam vastavamatra vastu.
Vedyam vastavamatra vastu.
Shivadam tapatrayon mulana.
Shivadam taputrayon.
Srimad Bhagvate Mahamuni Krite.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Kimva parir Ishvaraha.
Kimva parir Ishvaraha.
Sadyo hridi avaruditetra.
Sadyo hridi avaruditetra.
Krite bihi susu subhistakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity.
It's sufficient in itself for God realization.
It's sufficient in itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
By this culture of knowledge.
By this culture of knowledge.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam.
Sukhamukhat amrita dravya samyatam.
Sukhamukhat amrita dravya samyatam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Muhur aho raska bhuvibhavaka.
Muhur aho raska bhuvibhavaka.
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagvatam.
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
The mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit, the desire for the Vedic literatures.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this food has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for
Although
all,
its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna.
Shambhantam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Hridyantaksto hi Bhadrani.
Vidyantasto Yabhadrani.
Vidunati Suhitsatam.
Vidunati Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad
is
Gita.
itself righteous activity.
It is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna was dwelling within everyone's
acts as a best-wishing friend,
heart, acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the body, constantly engages hearing of him.
Nasta prayesu abhadresu
Nasta Preshra Bhadrishu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva
bhagavati uttamasloke
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nasti.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the
he
devotees,
becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service to the Lord.
Tadarajas tamo bhava
Tada Rajastamo Bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
Kamalobhadayaschaye
cheta etayanavidam
Chitaitera Navidam
stitvam sattve prasidati.
Citam Sattve Prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
and thus material lust and avarice are
and
diminished.
as material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasanna manaso
Evam Prasanamanas
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha
Bhagavat Bhakti Yoga
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnana
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When all these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in the position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becoming enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
Chidyante Sarva Samsaya
Chidyante Sarvasam
Chiyante Chasya Karmani
Chiyante Chasya
Drista
Karmani
Evatmanishware.
Drustai Varmanishwari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the heart not of material affection,
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the heart of material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of Samsam Samagama,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, and we're going to do verse 35 again. Bhagavan Sarva Bhutesu
Sarva Bhuteshu
Lakshita Swatmana Hari
Lakshita Swatmana Hari
Drishyair Buddhyadi Drasta
Vishai Buddhyadi Vidrasta
Lakshanair Anupma Palkai.
Lakshanai Anuma Pakai.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is in every living being along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. So this is a very important verse. If you want to be a expert preacher, and you notice it says, and this fact, is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. So why don't you look up the word hypothesized? It's something that you can understand or by your reason and logic. What's it say?
Put forward as a hypothesis.
What's it say?
Supposition. So, hypothesis, a supposition or a proposed explanation made on the basis of limited evidence as a starting point for further investigation.
Okay, good. Are you using your reason and logic? Yeah, okay. So it says, and this fact, that is that Krishna is in every living being along with the individual soul. In other words, talking about the Paramatma. This fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. This is very subtle and profound. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The general argument of the common man is that since the Lord is not visible to our eyes, how can one either surrender unto Him or render transcendental loving service unto Him? And this is a valid question, right? Any rational person would ask a question like that. To such a common man, here is a practical suggestion given by Srila Sukadeva Goswami as to how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. Okay. So, in other words, you're talking to a normal person, right, or a common man, and you're going to make what's called a practical suggestion that was put forward by Srila Sukadeva Goswami as to how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. So I said logic and reason, but it's reason and perception, almost the same thing. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present materialized senses. Okay, that's the whole point. Our senses are so limited, and that's one of the four faults, right? We make mistakes, we're easily illusioned, our senses are imperfect by the fact that they're limited, and we have a cheating propensity. So, how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present materialized senses. So when it says materialized senses, it's implying that we have something called spiritual senses, but they become corrupted by association with in the material world. But when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy. And such a pure devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. So in other words, when there's awakening of our spiritual, let's say, yearning for knowledge and liberation from cycle of birth and death, then by engagement in practical devotional service, the Lord will reveal to us His presence. Now that's normal. Let's say you have a secret. Your secret is somehow or other you saved $5 million in a, in your pillow or underneath your bed, right? And you have it all in cash. So you're not going to tell anyone that. Only persons that you trust completely, and you're sure that they would never betray you, and that you have great affection for them. And so, let's say right before you die, you would call such a person, and you'd say, look, underneath this bed here, there's $5 million in cash, so I'm going to die very soon, so I'm going to give this to you. So you see, it's based on your trust and your love and your practical assessment of the person, that they, this person will not betray me, this person will use the money honestly, or use the money in a proper way. So that trust is built up by practical service attitude of the devotee, because the devotee has realized, look, all other activities in life are not going to lead to anything other than taking birth again in the material world. But it's only by practical service attitude and actual service that I can actually make a solution of the fundamental problem of life, which is this birth, death, old age, and disease. And the service attitude for serving Krishna, not just service attitude, but service attitude for serving Krishna, is the conclusion that one comes to, that this is the thing that's going to actually save me. And this is one reason, the main reason why I joined Krishna consciousness, because little by little I realized that Krishna consciousness is the only way I can become free from my karmic, let's say my karma from previous lives. And I realized when I heard about karma and I thought about it, I realized I had very bad karma by birth, in a certain family, and associations I had, and up until that age when I was 22, the types of experiences I experienced, and also what happened in my family, the way my father died, and all these things, I realized I had very bad karma. And there's no way I could change it, except when I heard that it's possible to change my karma. I say up until I was 22, I had a lot of bad experiences. And then I realized that I don't even know the rest of the story. But based on what has happened so far, it doesn't look very good, right? So I realized, I don't know, is there any way I can change this? And I realized by by talking to devotees and reading a little bit of Bhagavad Gita that I had read, that it was by Krishna consciousness that the only way I could change this. To instead of being locked into this implacable, unchangeable karma, there is a way to nullify it. So, and that's basically what's being said in 1866. Sarvadharmam prityaja, mamekam saranam braja, ham tvam sarva papebhyo moksisyami ma suchaha. That's why that verse is so important. And the other verse that says, I'll say in a second. So it says, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Well, I was fearful, and when I was 22, I was fearful because up until then, things weren't going so good, And then after that, what's going to happen, right? It didn't look good. And here he's saying, just surrender unto me, give up all different varieties of religion, just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. That's an important statement. And then 9th chapter, 22nd verse, also basically says the same thing in different words, but it comes to the same conclusion. That is, Ananya chintayanto mam ye jana paryapasati te samnitya bhayuktanam yogashemam vaham yaham. And that means that, but those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack, and I preserve what they have. So basically, it's saying almost the same thing, that Krishna is going to provide whatever I'm missing. And I was definitely missing part of the puzzle because life wasn't going good for me. And preserve what they have. Anything good I might have had up until that point, Krishna would preserve it. So, and then in the purport to that verse, it says, one who is unable to live for a moment without Krishna consciousness cannot but think of Krishna 24 hours a day, being engaged in devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshiping, serving the lotus feet of the Lord. Well, this is what happened when I joined Krishna consciousness. This is what happened. All day long we were thinking of Krishna. Something I never did before. And then it says, such activities are all auspicious and full of spiritual potencies, which make the devotee perfect in self-realization, so that his only desire is to achieve the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's exactly what the regimented and strict life in the temple was. It was pointing always at, don't forget Krishna. Remember Krishna 24 hours a day. And also be submissive to the spiritual master so that you stay on the path. Right? Such a devotee undoubtedly approaches the Lord without difficulty. This is called yoga. Yoga is not some Hindu exercise to improve your breathing and your health and your meditation on what? On something, more sense gratification, basically, right? So this is called yoga. By the mercy of the Lord, such a devotee never comes back to this material condition of life. Well, wait a minute, that's a huge promise. Never come back to this material condition of life. Shema refers to the merciful protection of the Lord. Well, that's another major thing. You're not protected by the police or the government, or your own gun or whatever. You're protected by the Lord himself. And the Lord helps the devotee to achieve Krishna consciousness by yoga, by this constant meditation and thinking of the Lord. And when he becomes fully Krishna conscious, the Lord protects him from falling down to a miserable conditioned life. Okay, so this is why the Sri Vaishnavas, or at least the Alvars, and especially Ramanujacharya, chose these two verses from Bhagavad Gita. 2 out of the 3 of their main verses that every Sri Vaishnava was repeat every day. Right? And you can see why, because both verses are basically saying, this is going to change your karma. You're going to it's going to go from unknown mixed bag of good and bad karma to all good. And it's not karma anymore. It's bhakti. It's pure devotion. So that you don't come back again to this material world. Okay, so then it says, and then one is rewarded with real knowledge by revelation, not by academics. So there was another thing I realized. I said that I had, up until that point in my life, everything was based on academic achievement. But then I saw that this is a different system of how to get knowledge. It's by surrender to Guru and Krishna, and then it's revealed. You don't have to study. Like, to pass a test, oftentimes I would stay up all night long in college, and then go in, full of anxiety to take the test, And it was always, a very harrowing experience, because, flunking tests was like devastating. So, and then I would even take amphetamines to stay awake all night. So the whole thing was crazy. It was a horrible experience trying to get through college, So, so it says, but when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy. And such a pure devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. Well, that is an amazing statement. Realize the Lord's presence always and everywhere. He can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. So now this is talking about something I thought could only be achieved by taking LSD. That was to perceive things that are unseen normally. Right? But here it's saying, by the service attitude and by the mercy of the Lord, one can perceive the presence of the Lord always and everywhere, and perceive it, and I can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. This is a completely revolutionary definition of the word intelligence. In other words, intelligence is something coming from God. And that God is situated in my heart, in your heart. So this is an amazing statement. It's he can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. So God is actually giving me and you intelligence, and he's calling it the form direction. In other words, he's saying, look, you got to go this way, not that way, right? And he's revealing it. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize, even for the common man. So, yeah, sometimes you hear this inner voice saying, hey, don't do this. It's not the right thing, right? And that is actually the Paramatma speaking to us, right? The procedure is as follows. So now he's going to explain this, how to perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma, or Krishna, who's present in the heart.
What's the word form direction?
Right. Form direction. So that means that, in other words, it's saying, listen, go this way. Don't go that way. This is a wrong. Just like we're telling people, don't go after sense gratification. It's a dead end, and it'll just keep you in the material world. Go toward hearing classes, chanting Hare Krishna, following the regulative principles, eating only prasadam, and in other words, it's saying that's a form direction, right? This is God speaking to us and saying, look, don't go this way. It's not going to lead to anything good. It looks good. It looks very promising. Everybody's going that way. And those people going that way are like cattle going to slaughter, merrily going to their death. Don't go that way. It's a dead end. It's useless. It's not going to lead to anything good, even though everybody else is going that way. So form direction is that. It's saying, look, listen, hey, don't go this way. You go this way. Right? So that's why we're promising it in initiation. We're not going to go that way anymore, right? And then people might criticize, oh, you were such a nice person before, but now you're just like a party pooper. You don't come to the parties. You don't drink wine anymore. You don't do this. You don't do that. Yeah, because we got form direction by Paramatma himself saying, don't go that way. You go this way. See? So, yeah, isn't that a strange statement? Form direction. Yeah. And he says, the procedure of this type of realization through reason, logic, and hypothesizing the presence of the Lord in the heart. That's what it's all about, see? We're looking outside for the truth, but actually the absolute truth is inside. We never thought of looking inside. We always think of looking outside, Is God here? Is God there? Is he in India? Is he in Thailand? Is he on the moon? Whatever. But actually, no, he's right in the heart. The procedure is as follows. Point 1. One can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. Well, that's the first point. And by the way, if you become convinced of the first point, that I'm a person and I exist. This is basically, in one sense, what René Descartes did by his reason and logic. He says, I think, therefore I exist. Right? But that's not, that's only coming in the range of the target, not hitting the target. He's basically saying, I am this mind. But no, the truth is I am the soul. That's part and parcel of Krishna. So he didn't hit it exactly right, but he came close through reason and logic and hypothesis. Right?
It should be the other way. I exist, therefore I think.
I exist, therefore I think. Yeah. So he came close, but the existing means, you have. It actually means I'm a soul, but he didn't hit it right. Right? He came close. So, everyone can come to this conclusion that I'm not. I am actually existing as a person. Right? Now, what is that person exactly? Is it the body? Is it the mind? Or is it this thing called the soul? So, existence, yes, it's implying a soul that's eternal. But see, Descartes didn't get it right, I'm telling you. He came close only. And he did it by the process of neti. So he did use, he's like a Mayavadi, right? But even the Mayavadis are a little better than him because they believe in something like a soul. But their concept of the soul is incorrect. They believe in the supreme soul, that they are not a part and parcel, but they actually become the supreme soul. And there's only one soul. So they have it wrong too, but they came closer than Descartes. Or they come closer than Descartes. So, okay, so he says, one can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. He may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. So, he uses the word feel, right? So, but now he's going to become much more intellectually convinced that he's not the body. He can feel that the hand, the leg, the head, the hair, and the limbs are all his bodily parts and parcels, but as such, the hand, the leg, the hand, etc., cannot be identified with his self. Now that's now he's getting subtle, right? It's not so evident to most people. Most people may not be able to come to such conclusions by their intelligence because they don't have that intelligence. Therefore, just by using intelligence, he can distinguish and separate himself from other things that he sees. Okay, well that's a little easier. Yeah, I'm not the car. I'm not the house. I'm not, eventually, I'm not really an eternal member of this family. I'm not white. I'm not black. That's a little bit easier. I'm not the hand. Okay, I'm not the hand. I'm not the head. That's a little harder. I'm not the heart. That's a little bit harder, right? But by extending oneself to these other things like cars and houses and companies and things like that, it's easier to understand that. And then later on, when one thinks about it, I'm not the heart either, and I'm not the head either. I'm something different. I'm what is seeing these things. So that's what he's going to come to. So it says, so the natural conclusion is that the living being, either man or beast, is the seer, and he sees besides himself all other things. That's the point we're coming to. So even though it's hard to see that in terms of saying, I'm not the head. Wait a minute, if someone cuts my head off, I won't see anything, right? Or if someone stabs me in the heart, I won't see anything. But yet, by understanding I'm not all these other things, one can also assume that I'm not the head either, and I'm not the heart. So there is a difference between the seer and the seen. I'm the seer. So this, as soon as you come to that idea of seer and the seen, you jump from the material platform to this subtle platform, right? That it's possible to see something even after you're dead, physically. So there's a difference between the seer and the seen. Now, by a little use of intelligence, we can also readily agree that the living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or to move independently. So this is the point. Our seeing ability is highly limited, and it depends on other things that we did not create but were given to us, such as eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, such as the objects of seeing. That is, the objects of these senses: seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and feeling, and smelling. I'm sorry, and then the organs of action: hands, legs, and speech, and evacuation organs, and reproductive organs. See, and then the subtle things like the mind, intelligence, and the false ego. So now it's become very practical and philosophical that these things have all been given to me. I did not create them. I don't even remember acquiring them. These things were given. They're given. And what are they for? They're for perception and doing things, acting on the perceptions. All these are supplied to us by various arrangements of gross or subtle forms of natural energy. They're all energies, but I don't remember accumulating these things. Just like one time, one devotee was preaching, and someone told him, we're all God. That was his philosophy. We're all God. And this devotee said, but I don't remember creating the world. How can I be God? It is very, very practical, right? It defeated the guy, right? He said, I don't remember creating the world. How can I be God, right? So, yeah, and I don't remember acquiring all these things, the senses and the objects of the senses and the working senses and, and then how about the elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether? I don't remember making these things. All these things are given to me. And my understanding them is limited. And it is equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy. Yeah, there's so many things. There's trees, and there's birds, and there's mammals, and there's different human beings and races, and all these things are inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy. Natural energy is earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. And you can expand those 8 into 24, right? When you start saying the 5 fundamental elements and the 5 senses and the 5 objects of the senses and the 5 working senses, and that's already 20, right? And then the subtle senses, mind, intelligence, false ego, and then the aggregate, or called the Mahatattva. But the 8 becomes 24 when you think about it carefully. So now it says, and it is equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy. As this conclusively proves that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion, and as we undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy, we conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses, as well as the objects of perception, are material. So, that third point took most of the paragraph to explain. The third point is the turning point of the becoming very serious now. And that all this is to prove that there's a difference between the seer and the seen. Right? And then the fourth point of this process of perception and hypothesis is the fact that the spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence. Yeah, when a person becomes frustrated because they're a failure in certain ways, or they're frustrated because they want more and they can't get it, or that frustration, that dissatisfaction is spiritual. It's an indication of spirit, right? Why? Because our spirit does not want to be limited. It doesn't want to be subject to time. It doesn't want to be limited in happiness. It doesn't want to suffer. See, dissatisfaction is the sign that there's a soul. Is the column, is the carpet, is the marble slab frustrated or dissatisfied? No. They don't express any dissatisfaction. You have to be a living being to be dissatisfied. Like, for example, Prabhupada gives the example of the tree. The tree is stationary in one place for sometimes thousands of years. And so many things are happening to it. Birds are pecking on it, and people carve things on it, and insects are biting it all the time, and there's freezing cold, and there's real hot weather, and the tree is just standing there silently. Right? Now, if I stood there in one place like a tree, I would be very troubled. How could I just stand there and let insects bite me and people come and carve something? You know, Mary loves Joe with a heart like that and an arrow through it, right? I wouldn't be able to stand it, right? I'd be screaming. I'd be complaining all the time, right? Well, that complaining is the sign of a living being that's a soul and not the body, right? And that's the proof that the body is different than the person, because the person is complaining, whereas the body of the marble, the square there, that doesn't explain it. That doesn't express any dissatisfaction. So there's nothing else but that matter, right? But when there's a soul in the matter, it complains. And people are complaining all the time. Look. Politics is all about complaining. You know, as soon as Trump lost, then everyone's complaining about Biden, and when Hillary lost, all the Democrats are complaining about Trump. And then Trump loses. Now all the Republicans are complaining about Biden, right? He's doing this, he's doing that. This is a mistake. That's a mistake. And so this is what's happening, that dissatisfaction is the fourth point. The spiritual quality of the seer. So now we accepted there's a seer and the seen. But the spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence. Yes. Why? Because the soul does not want to be limited. We don't want to be limited, right? And someone tells you, oh, you can't get into Stanford because you don't have what it takes. Well, you get upset, you know. So wait a minute, why can't I get into Stanford, right? Or why can't I get into MIT? You see, or why can't I get into IIT? So that dissatisfaction is a sign that you have a soul, and your soul doesn't want to be limited. So our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence, that's the real limitation. And we're conditioned by the three modes of nature, and it's forcing us to stay prisoners to this cycle of birth and death. There are some less intelligent arguments that matter develops the power of seeing and moving as certain organic development. But such an argument cannot be accepted because there is no experimental evidence that matter has anywhere produced a living entity. Well, but this is what they're promising. They're saying, "Oh no, we're gonna do it. You know, we're gonna produce the God particle with our cyclotron accelerator, and change energy into matter, and then matter will eventually become spirit, if there is such a thing as a spirit." So in other words, spirit is only a combination of matter. So that is called going up a path that is a dead end, thinking that it's going to lead somewhere, but it's not leading anywhere. And that's the same with cancer. They've been studying how to cure cancer for, I don't know, about 80 years now, right? And they haven't found a cure. Right? And every year they collect money to cure cancer. They have also what's called the March of Dimes. You remember that? That was for cancer, wasn't it? Yeah. That was in the 1950s, right? And so they've been collecting money all these years to cure cancer, and cancer hasn't been cured. So why? Well, this is something you might not know. I've mentioned it before. They're trying to find a genetic way of healing cancer. They believe that it's caused by some genetic mutation. See? And that is a dead end. You cannot heal cancer just by manipulating the genes. It's not possible. If it was possible, they would have done it already, right? They're trying to heal it in a way that's impossible. You can heal cancer by changing your lifestyle and eliminate. Well, if you read my booklet, I don't know if you ever read my booklet, 5 Steps to Optimal Health. Have you ever read that?
That was 3 years ago.
Yeah. Did you read it?
Yeah.
If you follow the 5 steps to optimal health, you won't get cancer. And if you do have cancer, you can heal it. Anyway, what they've done is try to find their theory of what can heal cancer is impossible. You can't just alter genes, so-called genes, and heal cancer. In other words, they never talk about lifestyle adjustment. They never talk about preserving sperm, not losing sperm, and vaginal fluids and things like that. They never talk about that. But that's where that's what dissipates the energy, the ojas of the living entity, and makes them susceptible to getting diseases like cancer or viruses and things like that. But they don't accept that. It's not in their worldview. Okay, so, but such an argument that at a certain point of organic development, the soul will evolve. It's another hopeless theory that leads to nowhere, right? And Prabhupada says, there is no experimental evidence that matter has anywhere produced a living entity. Trust no future, however pleasant. Idle talks regarding future development of matter into spirit are actually foolish because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. Well, they'll say, no, our computers can see, they can talk, and they can reason, and they can defeat world chess champions and playing chess. So, and then pretty soon, they'll do everything else that a human being can do. No, that's nonsense. It's not true. Okay, just because a computer can defeat a chess master doesn't make it a human being. The chess master does a lot of other things besides play chess. So just because the computer can do that doesn't mean the computer can only do what it's programmed to do by human beings. If there's it cannot program itself. That's what they're claiming that will happen in the future. That's it's called singularity, where the computer actually mimics a human being in every way. That's what they mean by singularity. But that's not going to happen. And Prabhupada says, because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. So they make these virtual dogs, which are robots, right? Bezos a couple of years ago went outside with a virtual dog, right? With a robotic dog. And then they make sex robots and this robot soldiers that fight and move. But that does not make them a human being. They're only programmed to a certain level by the human beings. And their theory is at one point they will surpass human beings. They'll be able to do everything human beings do and more. But that's not possible because they can only be programmed by human beings. They're not individuals, right? Therefore, it is definite that matter and spirit are two different identities. And this conclusion is arrived at by the use of intelligence. Well, that proves that all the scientists working on AI are not intelligent. Because they think that matter and spirit are the same. They're not different. Now we come to the point that things which are seen by a little use of intelligence cannot be animate unless we accept someone as the user of or director of the intelligence. So in other words, there is this dichotomy between, and the dichotomy means difference between the seer and the seen. So as long as you can see the body, your own body, that proves that you're not the body. Because there's a difference between the seer and the seen. The seer is conscious and the seen is not conscious. You see the body, does the body see you? You see the brick, does the brick see you? You see the car, does the car see you? Does the car say, "Oh, hello, Prabhu, how are you today?" Well, you can program it, have some voice to say that, but just like you have GPS, so something is speaking to you, you know. So it says, "Turn right at the next light," right? But when you turn right, there is no right at the next light. So sometimes the GPS makes a mistake, right? And then sometimes it's right. But that speaking is not, it's been programmed. The GPS is not individually perceptive, independently perceptive. It's been programmed to be like that. That intelligence has been given by a person. So their point is that at a certain point, the robot or the software will be independent of human beings. That is not possible. Now we come to the point that the things which are seen by a little use of intelligence cannot be animate unless we accept someone as the user of or director of the intelligence. Intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority. So this is form direction, okay? There's intelligence, there's the levels of intelligence, right? So Paramatma is the highest level of intelligence. So Paramatma is revealing to us the form and direction that we should go to. And here again it's saying that. Intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority, and the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. So intelligence is the discriminative power. Okay, look that word up. Discriminative. Discriminative. You're able to discern what is right and wrong. That's intelligence. You're able to see which way to go, right or left. That's intelligence. Yes?
It is able to recognize or make distinctions with accuracy.
There you go, with accuracy, right? That's intelligence. And most people, like when you choose to drink alcohol, that means you have no intelligence, right? When you choose to go into the direction of sense gratification, there's no intelligence. That's all ignorance. Intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority, and the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. When one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man, and so a living being is dependent on intelligence or the direction of a superior being. Well, who's the most superior being? It's Paramatma. So intelligence is coming from Paramatma. So where is stupidity coming from? Stupidity is coming from a person who's deranged, who's not taking any instruction from Guru or Krishna. It's only imagining things in the mind. You know, I will be happy by buying a bottle of wine and drinking it and getting drunk. Well, there's no intelligence there. That's all ignorance, the mode of ignorance. It's the modes of nature that are dictating now, not intelligence. When one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man, and so a living being is dependent on intelligence or the direction of a superior being. So the computer depends on the intelligence or the direction of superior beings. It has no discriminative power on its own. It has to be given to it, say, or programmed. Such intelligence is all-pervading. Every living being has his. Okay, when it says such intelligence is all-pervading, that means Paramatma. Paramatma is all-pervading. In other words, this intelligence is everywhere. Everywhere. But we have to connect to it. That's called yoga. When one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man, and so a living being is dependent on intelligence or the direction of a superior being. Such intelligence is all-pervading. Every living being has his intelligence, and this intelligence, being the direction of some higher authority, is just like a father giving direction to his son. The higher authority, who is present and residing within every individual living being, is the super-self. This is what should be taught to children. This is real knowledge. See? And they're not teaching this to children. They're teaching nonsense, that everything is, in modern education, everything is minus Krishna. At every step, they deny the existence of Krishna. See? Therefore, what the kids are learning is not intelligence. They don't become intelligent. They go in the wrong direction. They don't get formed direction in the right direction. They get formed direction in the wrong direction. See? So, that is point 4, right? So, and that's one complete paragraph. So that one complete paragraph was dedicated to point 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now it says, at this point in our investigation, we may consider the following question. On the one hand, we realize that all our perceptions and activities are conditioned by arrangements of material nature. Yet, we also ordinarily feel and say, I am perceiving or I am doing. Therefore, we can say that our material senses of perception and action are moving because we are identifying the self with the material body, and that the superior principle of super-self is guiding and supplying us according to our desire. This is a big point. Very big point. By taking advantage of the guidance of super-self in the form of intelligence, we can either continue to study and to put into practice our conclusion that I am not this body, or we can choose to remain in the false material identification, fancying ourselves to be the possessors and the doers. Our freedom consists in orienting our desire either toward the ignorant material conception or the true spiritual conception. So we'll stop right there, and we'll finish this tomorrow. So in other words, our free will is limited to either accepting Krishna's instruction or rejecting it. If we reject it, we become a prisoner of the modes of material nature. If we accept it, we become liberated and go back to Godhead. This is absolutely brilliant. And so how Prabhupada could have wrote this purport from the verse is proof that he is a transcendental person. This one purport is enough to prove that his vision, everything is transcendental. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada,
Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada.
Shri Guru Cha Kevalava Kati Sadama Shri Guru Cha
Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Vandamuhi Sabadana Mate
Bando Mui Sabadana Mate
Vandamuhi Sabadana Mate
Bando Mui Sabadana Mate
Jara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai
Janar Prasade Bhai He Bhavatoriya Jai
Krishna Praptiya Jai Hoite
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Krishna Praptiya Jai Hoite
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Sitete Koriya Akya Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Sitete Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Sitete Kori Akya Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Sitete Kori Arna Kariyo Mane Asha Arna Mane Arna Kariyo Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Yo Tamogati Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Yo Tamogati Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha Jai Prasade Pure Sarva चक्षुदान दिलो ये जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान
बजे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित
प्रेम भक्ति जाते अविद्या विनाश जाते
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
वेदे गाय जारा चरित
प्रेम भक्ति
वेदे गाय जारा चरित श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु
लोकनाथ लोकेरा जीवन
लोकनाथ लोकेरा जीवन
हा प्रभु कर दय दया मोरे परचय
हा प्रभु कोरा दया देह मोरे पदचय
एबे असगु सुत्रिभुवन एबे दुई पादे लैल शरण
दुए पादे लैल शरण
शिल प्रभुपाद पतित पवन
शिल प्रभुपाद पतित पवन
जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद शिल प्रभुपाद
जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine
Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namini
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Patsatari Satarine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vasyatya
Jai Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Jai Prabhupada
Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Nitai Gaura Haribo Haribol, Haribol, Nitai Gaur, Haribol, Nitai Gaur.
Haribol, Haribol, Gaur Haribol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Rajgachasta Tarasatra Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vinda Ki Jai. Amacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasati Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kundagiri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana Ki Jai. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great honor and reverence. By his grace, I cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection and fulfills all the desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth and everywhere. By him, this is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master, ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your name is spread on all three worlds. Take shelter.